Good morning, folks. My name is Eric Bates. This paper was done in conjunction with a colleague of mine, Carol Sagler, who couldn't be here today. And both of us wrote this paper basically on arts-based education research, which was new to both of us, as I'll explain to you now as we go along. So some background on myself. I'm a lecturer in Dublin Institute of Technology. We're one of the largest providers of higher education in Ireland at the minute. And at the minute we're striving to achieve technological university status in Dublin. It would be the first one of its kind in Ireland if they are successful in getting that. I teach mainly now in undergraduate programs, and I do subjects like communications, presentation skills and other soft skills. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background because it leads me to where I am today and what I'm doing and why I'm standing in front of you right now. When I left school, I served a 4-year craft apprenticeship as a painter and decorator. And during that apprenticeship period, I undertook night courses and additional training as part of that. Following that, I became self-employed and worked in the construction industry for a number of years, and I had an opportunity then to teach on craft apprenticeship with the people who taught me when I was an apprentice in the building where I went to as an apprentice. And it was a great honour to work with my mentors. Now, after a couple of years of doing that, I looked around, there was opportunities, and I went back and did a part-time degree, and I did a degree in psychology, went on and did a master's in higher education. And my point here is that both strands of my career in industry and in my academic career, I've continued on with self-development. I've seen that as a part of what I do. Which is why I'm here now, because I'm currently undertaking a Doctor of Education programme at Queen's University, Belfast. And if you're not familiar with a Doctor of Education programme, there's 9 modules and a thesis. And this paper arises from one of these modules, which was a narrative and arts-based education research module, which I hadn't heard an awful lot about before I went onto this program. And when I took this module, I intended on focusing on the narrative methods element of it. And the way it works is they send you out this pre-reading for maybe 8 weeks beforehand, a big bunch of reading, and you read over the theory of it, and it's all very interesting. But in doing this pre-reading, I was drawn to the arts-based education element of it rather than the narrative element of it. So the pre-reading focuses on a really broad scope. I was surprised at how much there was out there. I hadn't really heard of it at this point. And I came across an interesting definition of what is arts-based education research. A text, a theatrical, musical performance, a visual depicting raw, coded or analysed data. It's very broad in its scope. And really, ABER is an umbrella concept because it's a genre rather than a specific research method. There are so many different ways of collecting and analysing data in it. It doesn't aim, from the beginning, arts-based education research, they acknowledge that it's limited in what comes out of it. It really is limited. They're not saying it's going to change the world. My paper is not going to change the world. It's a reflective piece that I did. It's going to change something in me. That's the idea of it. It's to try and look at your professional practice, question what you think you know. So it doesn't aim for predictability. It really looks for an enhancement of perspectives and questioning what you take for granted. Now that's all well and good, doing the pre-reading. You read all about the theory of it. But it's when I actually went and did the tutorial with Professor Ruth Leach, that's when it really kind of lit up for me. So doing all the pre-reading, all very interesting, finding out about this theory. This Professor Ruth Leach, she is so passionate for this subject. And her passion is infectious when you stand in front of her. She is so good at what she does. So when we go up and do this tutorial, you do 2 days talking about the theory, discussing it, looking at all the different aspects of it. Then she gets you to actually do it. And it's very intimidating because, as you'll see, it's quite out of the norm. So what she did was she tasked us all with producing a piece of ABER in how you saw yourself in relation to your role, because there are many different people on the program, or how you saw yourself in relation to your organisation that you work for. And I like the idea of this because in previous research I've looked at the experience of my students in learning. I've looked at my own, I attempted to be a reflective practitioner, looked at how I teach. But all very much traditional, qualitative, asking questions, using paper, doing surveys, stuff like that. This was different, because in this you have to produce a piece of art. And it's really important to note, you don't have to be an artist. Once you can identify what you've done, that's all that's required from it. So what happens is, she sets out a range of arts and crafts material, and you have a choice. There are all these different things you can do: a collage, a mask, self-system image, creative timelines, and there's a lot more than that, which we covered in the theory element of it. So basically you're tasked with producing something. I was drawn probably naturally to the self-system image from my background as a craft painter and decorator, because I was using paper, paints, paintbrushes the way I would have when I was a craft painter and decorator, so I was drawn to that. You go off and you create your image. It took me about an hour. So you have to think about what you've been tasked with, go off and create something. And you have to try and do it very quickly. Not to ponder on it too long, but do what comes to you first and try to create something from that. I found this really, really easy. Surprisingly easy, because something came to mind very quickly. I got it down on paper. Once you have it down, you have to analyze the image. And like all qualitative data, this is where the real challenge comes in. You try to question your own assumptions. When you're analysing yourself, it's very easy to portray yourself in a very positive manner. What I wanted to do was kind of drill down into how I saw myself. In Ireland, we've gone through a period of recession for about 10 years at this stage, and academics are getting hammered in Ireland. Our job is getting hammered. We are really being put up there as in some way being a privileged class, while at the same time we're being cut. Our hours are being loaded on us. We have a series of pay agreements, and the job is not what it used to be. I'm there 15 years now, and it is not what it used to be when I started. I'd like to say, when you're producing this for Professor Leach, you have an assurance that it's going to be confidential, and the reason for that is she wants you to try to be as honest as you can in what you're doing, no matter how poorly it may portray you, to be honest in what you're doing. So I came across this book, which is fantastic, Gillian Rose, Towards a Critical Visual Methodology, and I analysed the image using her framework in there, which basically looks at the side of production, the side of the image itself, and the side where the image is seen by others. It's a very good framework for a novice. I'd never even heard of this, and this provided a structure for a novice in which to analyse that image. Richardson talks about writing as a method of discovery, and that's what I found. I had this image, then I had to analyse it, and in writing it, I found a lot of illumination. It didn't provide me with traditional answers, that wouldn't be fair to say at all, but it would also be fair to say that there was no traditional research question. I was looking at a relationship, and the relationship was between me and my workplace. I've never reproduced the image or the analysis, because I was very honest and critical about myself. The analysis revealed aspects of my professional practice which I'm not happy about, because really it was so personal in doing this analysis. I was glad of the confidentiality. I was almost embarrassed writing it because I was so self-critical. And it's really the best way to engage with this is to be critical, really critical, if you want to delve down deep into it. So I got fantastic results from it in terms of what I took away from it. Other researchers talk about arts-based education research as being an intervention, and that's actually the way I felt. It was an intervention for myself. It caused me to reflect on my position, which I normally did anyway, but I went much deeper with this. And as a result of this, I have changed all the bad stuff that's going on in Ireland and all the media. We're being hammered in the media. I have changed. I have gone back to the way I was when I first got this job, which was so full of enthusiasm. It is a fantastic job. We are privileged, but not privileged in the way they made us out in the media, but we are privileged to stand in front of people and be educators. That is the highlight of my job, is standing in front of students. I went for jobs in management and I didn't get them. And now I'm glad I didn't get them, because it would have taken me out of a classroom. And the classroom for me is where the action happens. And this opened my eyes to where the action happens for me, which is back in the classroom. There's a lot of information about the traditional forms of research and their limits in terms of human diversity at the minute, how you explore human diversity. And this, I mean, I was really skeptical of this at the start, but I found this really, really useful. I'm even considering using it for my thesis, which for someone from the College of Engineering and Built Environment, from a construction background, this is really odd. But both of us, Carol and myself, she found this very fruitful as well. And Carol, we both believe that this is a process that can pay dividends to the reflective practitioner, but you have to be honest with yourself when you're doing it. So we'd like to acknowledge Professor Ruth Leach, and I'll take any questions if anybody has any. And I'll understand if you don't. Yes.
Do you think it could be just as effective if you've got a research question?
Yeah, there are so many, there are so many methods in it that you can be much more direct and focused from the beginning, whereas it was an impromptu. This is a tactic that Professor Leach does the whole time, which is to catch you unawares, to not give you time to think about it too much, because, as she maintains, we portray ourselves in a positive light. But to date, this has been used with children. There's fantastic results from children in Northern Ireland. And in Northern Ireland, we have issues with Catholics and Protestants and religious divides. And they have used this to identify really subtle distinctions between kids and how they see themselves and how that religious divide manifests in a child's everyday life. But yeah, absolutely, it can be used in a much more focused manner.
Because I know about the art-based methods, but I was particularly interested in using it in the environment that you are doing it.
Oh yeah.
And I thought especially architects, they would love it because they're so creative. And that comes from it, because every building is actually also a reflection of yourself.
Oh absolutely, the creativity that's there is fantastic.
And to get to know yourself in a way like that.
And be honest with yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.